All right. What's up, everyone? Kevin Allen here, aka the Geek, and this is the Showdown breakdown. Where my turds at? Where we break down the Jets taking on the Ravens. What a shit show this game is likely to be. We've got a 45-point game total, with the Ravens sitting at 31 of those 45, and the Jets projected for 14 and a quarter. Massive Raven favorite here, of course. Now, defensively, Jets coming in as the number 2 defense against the run this season. Mediocre against the pass, 22nd DVOA. Ravens defense, mediocre against the run, 21st DVOA. Much better against the pass, coming in 3rd overall. They have some elite cornerback play. So, on paper, just to get going, just to get started, on paper, you would think that the Jets would have success, if they have any success at all, running the football with Le'Veon Bell. It's important to note that with Bilal Powell out, and Bilal Powell had been getting touches even in games when Le'Veon Bell was fully healthy and workhorsing it. If you take a look here, you could see, last week, obviously, he got the start. But before that, he did 5, 7, couple targets. He's been getting work every single week. So he's part of the reason that Bell has not been a workhorse. If you look at the numbers for Bell, 18, a couple targets. Sometimes he gets a little more action. If the Jets are going to score a touchdown, there's a pretty good chance it's going to be Le'Veon Bell doing the scoring. Probably going to happen. Probably be him, because he's going to be out there all the time. The backup running back for the Jets is Ty Montgomery, and he's really just somebody who will spell you / do some get some passing game work. Now, I don't know. Adam Gase, really weird coach, does weird things, makes weird faces, just a weird dude. So I don't know what the fuck he's going to do. But if I was the Jets and I was game planning for the Ravens, the first thing I'd think about is, how do I keep the ball out of Lamar Jackson's hands? And the best way is to control it via the run. So you'd think they'd bring a run-heavy game plan. And if you're playing a Jet player in this showdown, and you're forced to, unfortunately, that's the rules. Forcing us. Le'Veon Bell would be my guy, right? Simple as that. That'd be my guy. That's who I'd use. Now, let's get into each team real quick, as I like to do to start these breakdowns. Again, the thought here is, or before we actually get into that, let's just talk a little bit of quick strategy on this thing. Listen, the reality is, Lamar Jackson's a fucking beast. Everybody's going to want to play him at the captain, at the at the MVP, at the captain, at everything. So when you understand this, when you know this, we know the obvious approach. Everybody's going to do it. So how do you get different? That's going to be the most important thing about constructing your lineups. What can you do different? Because, listen, you're going to run 150 lineups. If you tie, you're not going to make any money, even for first place. If it's some obvious lineup, it's going to be a massive first place tie. That's not going to make any money. So what we want to start to think about are, what are alternative approaches that we can do? Like, what are some situations where Lamar isn't the MVP, where he isn't the captain? It's so unlikely. But what are these situations that would cause it? This is what I want you guys to think about as you're building lineups. Or if he is the MVP, who is the turd that needs to be in your lineup? Like, what lineup construction? Do we leave a ton of salary on the table and take like 2 turds? That could work. So like, if you're using Lamar Jackson, you might go really crazy and, hey, I got Bell in there, but you might go really crazy and just be like, oh, I'm going to pair him up with Seth Roberts, Nick Boyle, and some weird shit that leaves a ton of money on the table. No one's going to have this. I don't want it either, but no one's going to have it. Is Jackson going to come out and RG3 come in late and he does something? Maybe. Don't play him in the MVP, though. Play him in the flex. Could happen. We'll go through it as we talk about these turds. What about in a blowout? Justice Hill or Gus Edwards, who want to get some exposure. So we got a lot of turds to consider. And one of the fun things about the Ravens is they're all fucking turds. Everybody who's not Lamar Jackson is basically a turd. All of them. Why? Because they're 5 or 6 touch people. We'll go through every single player. Let's do this. Let's look at the players themselves. Actually, note today the cheat sheet is my own. A rare Geeks cheat sheet for Showdown. So I got all these turds in there. That's how that happened. It's not normal. Got a lot of turds in there. It's a rare Geek Showdown cheat sheet. You know, and even as I think through the slate, I continue to consider other options. So unlikely. So, but I mean, you know, even as we think through the slate, you have to consider certain things. And I'm actually raising up my Le'Veon Bell exposure, even from when I wrote the sheet up, because the more I think through the game, how the fuck are the Jets going to have any chance at all? They've got to lean on Bell. Plus, I like that Powell is out. I think Powell being out gets a little bit more workhorse action going. And what I'm hoping for from Bell here is not like a bunch of carries up the gut against the Ravens defense. He's not going to be able to do shit. He hasn't crossed 100 yards all season. This Jets offensive line cannot run block at all. But what I'm hoping for is a lot of passing game work. Something like that with elite cornerback play from the Ravens. But let's get into it one team at a time. Everybody knows the rules. One team. Everybody knows the rules. Let's do this. Ravens, Lamar Jackson, ultimate play. Okay? Guy has been doing great. 20. Look at the numbers. Rarely goes under 20 fantasy points. Now, why is that important? He's the most expensive player on the slate. And again, on DraftKings, it's not that difficult for a wide receiver or a pass-catching running back. Not so much just the straight running back, but a pass-catching running back to get 25 fantasy points in a game. It's not out of the question for that to happen. So what if Marquise Brown, who we saw not long ago have a 20-point game? Now that's about his ceiling. He's got a 33-pointer. If this game happens again, Marquise Brown could be the captain. He'll be at 5% ownership. Everything that you do that's not Lamar Jackson will be massively low owned. So that's one of the considerations here, guys. You have to think, all right, if I'm Lamar Jackson in the captain spot, I'm going up against this contest here has 130,000 entrants, right? If you play Lamar Jackson, you're going up against like 100,000 of them or 90,000. So the rest of your lineup better be damn fucking good. But and it's winnable. That's how you got to brute force that attack. You got to brute force attack it, which means you've got to get all kinds of crazy combinations to try to find the perfect one. Even when you do that, it's going to be tough to get a solo win with Lamar Jackson at the helm because I think all scenarios will probably be accounted for. But if you don't use Lamar and you're willing to take a 70 to 80% chance that not using Lamar, you're dead. I would put Lamar Jackson at 80% that he's the highest scorer on this slate. 75 to 80% as the probability. So if you don't use him, you're hanging out in that 20%, but that's a real probability. But you better be, you also have to nail the right alternative. So just keep this in mind as you build showdown lineups. This is one of those special showdowns where the potential captain is so obvious that we really need to kind of think like, oh, wow. It was like the Christian McCaffrey time where it's like, it's so obvious that we almost have to like go against it in tournaments. So keep it in mind. You have to understand what kind of player you are and if you have the stomach for that type of approach to DFS. Because my boy, Bobby Wow, already DMing is like, the first thing I'm thinking is fade Lamar. And of course he's thinking that. That's a guy who wins these kind of contests, right? When you're a winner of this kind of contest, that's really like the first thought you have is like, all right, I'm fading the most obvious chalk. That is the sharpest mentality going into these. But you have to be able to stomach the idea of losing like 70% of the time or 80%, all of your money, all of your entry fees. If you're comfortable with that to get the win once in a while, that's great. And by the way, $250K to first, it pays for all of those losses. But you just got to have the stomach for it, which most people don't. Or at least consider doing it in a smaller contest, like for experimental purposes. Do it in the fucking Minimax just to check it out. See how that feels. Or in the nickel game on Fanduel. Check it out. See how it feels to go completely away from the chalk. This is a scary one to do it because, of course, it is Lamar Jackson, and he is probably going to be the highest scorer on the slate. There are very, very few scenarios that don't lead to that. All right, let's go through the team, though, and understand what's going on with Baltimore, and we'll find some turds. Where my turds at? Let's do this. Jackson, obviously, running back and quarterback all mixed into one. One of the challenges with Jackson is if Marquise Brown is doing his thing, Jackson's probably doing more of his thing because he's throwing those to Brown. If Andrews is doing his thing, Jackson's doing more of it. And as long as Jackson's throwing to more than one guy or rushing a little bit, he could still have a great chance of outside. Let's look at some great games that Mark Andrews has had. Let's look at his best game. Let's find it, right? Week 2. 28 fantasy points against Arizona. What did Lamar Jackson do that week? 33. Outscored him. He outscored him. What about Marquise Brown? Never gets a lot of targets. Or hasn't in weeks. Here's something interesting. Marquise Brown, finally not on the injury report. What the fuck is going on? This guy's always on the injury report every single week. Now he's healthy. We might get a special game from Marquise Brown today because he's not fucking hurt. Guy's always hurt. Jets secondary is terrible. Let's check out Marquise Brown's best game. Week 1. Did everything. 33.7 fantasy points. Week 1. What happened with Lamar? Outscored him. Lamar outscored him. This is what I'm saying. It's very difficult for any of these guys, especially at their low volume, especially the way the Ravens spread the football around, especially the way the Ravens don't throw that much, to outscore Jackson. It's not impossible, but it's difficult. There is that scenario where Jackson outscores someone, but, Brown ends up being the nut captain because you couldn't fit a lineup together that didn't have him. But that's, to me, exorbitantly unlikely because there's just not that many pieces that we need to try to force in here. But there's that scenario, right? If you have Brown and Jackson on Draftkings with Brown 12-3, and the total remaining is 23.9 or 6K per player. If we flip it and go Jackson Brown. 52 left, 21. So it's another 7K. So it's a big difference in remaining salary. And that difference, that 7K, you'd need the scores to be close enough between Brown and Jackson that the rest of your lineup can overcome it. If that makes sense. Now, going back to it, so Baltimore, you've got Jackson, you've got his 2 sort of low volume main pass catchers in Andrews and Marquise Brown. All in play. All stackable with Jackson. Not necessary stacks, but very stackable. These are the main guys he throws to, but they're not the only ones. So beyond that, people are going to mention Robert Griffin III. I'm going to mention him real quick as a super turd. Listen, if you want to play for Lamar Jackson, questionable tag, they break him out. They're completely destroying them in the fourth quarter. You want to put him in, blah, blah, blah. Injury, in-game injury, some shit like that. I mean, that's the turdliest of turd things you can ever do. Don't do a lot of that. Like, Take one share. Seems unlikely. Ravens defense, very strong play. Playable in captain. Jets are a team that implodes in primetime situations. I've been a Jets fan for a long time, and man, this team just not reliable in primetime normally. You don't, it's one of these teams that just gets smacked up in primetime. So Darnold's seen ghosts out there and all that. Darnold's been playing pretty good lately, and this is a home game, but even still. Tristan's asking about Demaryius Thomas. I am not a fan of Demaryius Thomas. He will not be playing today anyway, but I wouldn't have liked him even if he were. Ravens defense, so a really good play here. A scoring defense, multiple double-digit games this season. This sets up as a double-digit game. Will it be? So when we're looking at the defense, you're looking at the salary, $5,800. Who's going to outscore him? Willie Snead? If they put up 14? Probably not. Gus Edwards, Nick Boyle, the tight ends. I mean, the Ravens defense is fully in play. They could get a 20-plus point score. Ravens defense is also playable at the captain spot. One of the ways that Lamar Jackson doesn't smash is if Ravens defense eats 2 or 3 touchdowns. Could happen. It could happen. So it could happen. Ravens defense in play. Where's my boy? Okay, so Willie Snead, always overowned. Never does a whole lot. Had a couple of decent, games. Scored 2 touchdowns that one game. Still only got 15 points that time. Willie Snead's in play. He's a fucking turd. Get 3 or 4 targets just like anybody else. He's out there for the Ravens. So get some exposure. Can't help it. Don't like him. Don't matter. I'm try to get some ideas of ownership. But Gus Edwards, what I said about him in the notes is, listen, he hasn't done shit all year. He could get a little bit of extra run in a blowout. Certainly possible. But, I mean, if you look at his returns, it's been bad. They don't really use him by the goal line. Jets defense is actually very good against his style of play, unless the Jets basically quit at the end of the game because they're getting smashed so bad and this guy breaks one loose for a touchdown. So get some exposure. He always gets carries, but it's definitely not a good matchup for him or anything of that sort. Just the Jets defensively are very good against his style of running back. See ownership projections. Yeah, it could be. You'll probably get this guy like 15% owned. Something like that. Nick Boyle, Hayden Hurst. Okay, very important to talk about these two. Backup tight ends. Baltimore loves to throw to the tight end position. All of them are in play. Boyle, Hurst, this is your turds that will potentially win you a tournament. This 9-pointer. Expect 3 targets for each guy. If Mark Andrews is actually hurt, if he doesn't play, he's expected to, quote, attempt to play. This is some fucking bullshit, right? So can we trust Mark Andrews, quote, attempting to play? I mean, that concerns me. So what happens, let's say, again, we're painting scenarios that aren't the most likely. But let's say Andrews plays, but he gets hurt again, or he doesn't play, got the knee issue, whatever. Hayden Hurst steps up. He's the top guy to back up Boyle, to back up Andrews, followed by Boyle. These two guys are interesting. Again, Ravens love to throw to these tight ends. Any one of them get a touchdown. So whatever. Turds that. Some other interesting notes. Seth Roberts seems to be overtaking Miles Boykin as the WR3 in 3 wide sets. You've got Snead in there. You've got Marquise Brown out there. And then it's Roberts and Boykin. They're all playable. They all get snaps. So, do with that what you will. These are turds that are playable. And again, we're looking for situations that will be low owned. Because, especially in your Lamar Jackson at the helm lineup, everybody's got him at the helm. So what are you doing different? They're not even going to be that different, but it's a little bit different, and that's where you need to be. Hurst, let's see. Figure these guys 10 to 15% ownership. That range. Both Hurst and not Boykin. Both Hurst and Boyle. 10% owned. Figure on that. Okay, let's take out. So that's basically your Ravens offense in a nutshell. It's going to be mostly Lamar Jackson, Mark Ingram again. He's going to be very heavily owned. He's a guy who sometimes has a good game, a lot of times he doesn't. He is not a good matchup for him against the Jets defense. But again, the Vegas line, 15-point favorite. That does favor the running game, and it favors the smash running game. And Mark Ingram's going to be in there at the goal line. It's going to be a question when they get down to the goal line of if Jackson takes it home or if Mark Ingram's the guy who smashes it in. But, so he's got 2 or 3 touchdown potential here. Let's keep it in mind. And if he gets those 3 touchdowns, there's a reasonable chance that he outscores Lamar Jackson. Again, it's not a likelihood that he'll get 3 touchdowns. And if you think that, bet it. You could bet it on the sports book and make a lot of money. So do that. All right, let's take a look at the Jets side of the football now. If you're the Jets, what do you try to do to control the Ravens? You try to run. Keep the football out of Lamar Jackson's hands. How do you do that? You try to run it. Le'Veon Bell. Problem is, Jets can't run the football for shit. Le'Veon Bell hasn't passed 100 yards all season. He hasn't even come close, really. If you look, and even with a lot of carries, look at these average yards per carry, and this hasn't changed all year. And I'm not talking about against good teams. Cincinnati, Oakland, Washington, Giants. These are the worst run defenses. Miami, Jacksonville. The Jets have had a run against some of the worst run defenses in the league, and they haven't done shit. Now, you might say, well, it's 10 points, 17 points. These are the worst run defenses in the league. You can't cross 100 yards. So they throw to Le'Veon Bell, though, and that's where he's done all right. He's gotten some yardage there. Every once in a while, he smashes in a touchdown. I don't even think Le'Veon Bell would have a lot of luck trying to get a goal line carry into the touchdown. With this offensive line against this defensive line of the Ravens, I don't think he'd have a great shot at it. But, I mean, you got to give it a chance. Rhino's saying he could. Gase is an asshole, but who's he playing? Ty Montgomery? Bilal Powell's out. So you'd have to put in Ty Montgomery. No, Ty Montgomery, okay. He catches passes. But Sam Darnold, again, not a great spot. Ravens defense is just very, very ferocious. But sometimes teams on a Thursday night, they don't come to play. This is the type of stuff that we want to think about. Contrarian, like, what if they don't come to play? What if they're flat? We've seen it. It won't be the first time. What if they're flat? And the Jets come out and they're at home and they're fucking psyched and they come out and they score a quick touchdown. Oh, shit, I fucking didn't, blah, blah, blah. We'll all be crying. So build some scenarios for where that happens. But in general, am I expecting good things from Sam Darnold? No. The one thing, though, is he hasn't been completely terrible as a fantasy scorer. If you look at his returns, I mean, again, bad teams. Oakland, Washington, Miami, the same group that they couldn't run the football against, but Miami, Jacksonville, I mean, they've had such an easy schedule. When you have a good team, it looks really bad. So, but he's on a string of 10-point games. It's between Darnold and Bell to me for the highest floor on the Jets. Who's Darnold throwing to? Demaryius Thomas is injured, so it's going to be, and Ryan Griffin, the tight end, is injured. Out. Demaryius Thomas, Ryan Griffin, out. So who have you got? You got Anderson and Jamison Crowder. Anderson's going to be blanketed by Marlon Humphreys. He will not have a good day, although he's a big play wide receiver, and anybody can beat great coverage. We saw it. We've seen it. We've seen it before. We will see it again. That happens all the time. But again, in a flat game, he's not playing his best. But in a general scenario, you wouldn't expect a whole lot of success for Robbie Anderson for 2 reasons. 1, because, again, good coverage from the Ravens. 2, because the Ravens are a fierce pass rushing team, which will cause Sam Darnold to want to get the football out quickly, and that is more of an outlet pass to Jamison Crowder. I like J. Crow here. I don't love him. It's not a good matchup. He hasn't had a good game in a while. But I think that if the Jets are trying to get the football out fast, avoid the fierce pass rush, that's the guy you'd get it to. Okay, moving down the list, Demaryius Thomas out. Sam Ficken, man, I don't like a kicker on a team that's a 15-point underdog, because at some point you're going to have to stop kicking field goals. But that said, okay, he's got a floor. If you think the Jets get completely decimated, he's got some floor. I don't like it though. I think his floor is so low, it's almost unplayable. Now, I could be wrong. In order for him to kick a bunch of field goals, Jets would have to move the football via the pass or the run or something. They have to get to the red zone. So I can't see him being the best scorer on the Jets team. So if you're playing a 5-1 onslaught, this ain't the guy, because how is he scoring if they don't either run it or pass it to the point where he could kick a field goal? And if they're doing that enough to move the football from the 25 to the opposing 30, whoever's getting those yards is going to outscore the kicker. So don't have him in as your only Jet player. Blaupal out. Ty Montgomery. Okay. Back up to Bell. Passing game work. Maybe garbage time goodness at the end of the game. Little check down. Pull Bell out. I don't know why they would pull Bell out. What are they saving for, the playoffs? I don't. Somebody said to me today, I was actually talking to Season Long Sets, and he says, well, what if they rest this guy? Like, we're talking about a random player on a team that's not for the play, not from this game. Oh, what if they're down big and they just pull him? So what are they pulling him for? The playoffs? What are they saving these guys for? If it's week 15 and you're down by 30, who cares? Might as well play out the game. What are you saving your guy for? You ain't making the playoffs. I like that thought process, Tristan. I like it. I don't see the Jets beating the Ravens here, but I like the thought process. Lots of running game. All right, moving down. Jets defense. Okay, I mean, that's something I want to play. Jets defense is pretty mediocre. And the other thing is, the Ravens just have not given up points to opposing defenses this season at all. They've been really good at, I don't know if I'm going to say protecting the football, but they just put up big numbers. They don't throw it that much, so they don't have as many turnovers. That's what it is. All right, moving down the list, Super Turds. Super Turds. Vincent Smith. Where's the other Super Turd? He's so fucking turdly. Oh, D. Brown. Yeah, here we go. Jets tight end. Daniel Brown. Super Turd extreme. He's getting the snaps at tight end for the Jets. The Jets do like to throw to the tight end position. So, Daniel Brown. What can Brown do for you? I don't know. Probably not win you $250K, but you never know. They do like to throw to the tight end position. Ryan Griffin's out. Next man up. I think this guy was like the fourth stringer going into the season. Soon we'll be down to the fifth stringer. Like, I don't know. Don't expect much. But he got a catch last week. 1.7, baby. Other guy, Vincent Smith. He will be replacing Demaryius Thomas as a starter. Super cheap. He should get opportunities. This guy has been around for a while. He does have 3 and 4 target games over the course of the season, and that was with kind of a healthy crew when they do the 4 wide receiver sets. So he's been out there practicing with the team. Did I forget to mention Tucker, Tristan? Holy shit. Hold on a second. Let me go back to that. Tucker's one of my favorite plays on the sheet. All right, so that covers the Jets, and the mention was, I forgot to mention Tucker. Tucker is actually one of my favorite plays on the entire slate. Justin Tucker is a premier kicker, the best kicker in the league. A points getter. Jets defense, good against the run. Potential for drives to stall, which leads to kicks from Tucker. The reason he hasn't done better this year is just because the Ravens are so fucking good offensively. They score enough that they just haven't needed as many kicks from him. But the points that he's getting, 9 to 12, really good numbers here for 4K. He's a lock in cash games, a lock. Your cash game should actually start like this. Jackson and Tucker, that's like a lock in cash. Yeah, he's all over my sheet. So let's go to the sheet real quick. This is the Fanduel side. Let me go to the Draftkings side first, so I can kind of go through it and go through the thought process. This is the Draftkings side. So I have Lamar Jackson set up as the top core captain play, of course. If you're playing cash, it's essentially what we'd call a free square. In other words, your opponent will have him. You should have him. Then at that point, it doesn't matter what happens. But that's not a spot to get cute with in cash games. He's the only viable play in cash and probably the only viable play in high dollar, smaller tournaments. You've got to differentiate elsewhere. Everybody's going to play him. So what I try to consider and what I want you to consider when you do any non-Lamar Jackson at the helm lineups is, what is the situation that came up that caused Lamar Jackson to not be the nuts? And again, I'm going to add in Bell here. I don't like it, but it's appropriate to have him. I'm going to add it in. I don't like it. I'm going to add it. I don't like it. I'm adding it. I don't like it. Adding it. So what are the situations that cause Lamar Jackson to not be the nut? Well, one of them is if Mark Ingram somehow scores 3 touchdowns, steals them all. Lamar Jackson doesn't need to do much, but Ravens defense gets a touchdown. Mark Ingram gets a bunch of touchdowns, a long run, and they just don't need anything from Lamar Jackson. I mean, it's just not how this offense generally operates, but it hasn't operated like that almost all year. But hey, shit happens. YOLO. Shit happens. I don't know. So I'm looking for scenarios that don't allow that open up the possibility that Jackson is not the nut. Now, Marquise Brown. If Marquise Brown, who we know is an explosive player, if he's the nut, Lamar Jackson's in the flex 100%. He's having a monster game. It's almost impossible for Brown to outscore Lamar Jackson in the game, but it is not impossible. It would just need to be all of the volume to Brown. That's not how this offense is operating, but it could happen. There's also the factor of him being so much cheaper. Saving the 8K might actually allow for a different line of construction that could lead to a perfect score, a nut score. So there is a scenario where even if Brown doesn't outscore Lamar, that he could be the nut play if he scores, 20 and Lamar gets 23, but the rest of the lineup works out a different way because of it, where you could fit a different group of players together. So that's that scenario. Unlikely. Sam Darnold, again, not super likely. If he's doing it, you've got to have 2 or 3 of his pass catchers in your lineup. That's why it's only a 5%er. It's almost impossible. But if you use him, you probably have to stack him with 3 players. Anderson, Crowder, and like a tight end, or Bell via the pass or something is going to have to go off. It's so unlikely. Because if it's Robbie Anderson's going to outscore Darnold. And if it's Jameson Crowder, Crowder will outscore him. But it just have to be this crazy combination, which just seems unlikely. How unlikely? Very. Ravens defense, yeah. Again, one of those scenarios that I talked about, part of the reason why I don't mind taking some shots with them. A, the Jets, again, implode on primetime games. That's a thing. B, Ravens defense, good scoring defense. C, we've seen them put up 20-plus points, which could, if they score twice, then, and Mark Ingram gets a touchdown, Lamar Jackson might have a shitty game. We're looking for scenarios where Lamar Jackson does not have a smash spot. And one of them is if the Ravens defense scores a couple of times. Or if the running back. So I like the idea of pairing Ravens defense with Ravens running backs. Ingram, Hill, Gus Edwards, some shit like that. the more absolute and locked in, I'm going to address this, Steve. The more absolute and locked in a player seems to be, he must be the highest scorer. That's the better scenario to say, YOLO, fuck it. I'll accept the loss if it happens. I know I've got an 80% chance of losing all my money, but you can fade him, sack up, go with all the other people. And if you're right, you will win all the money. You only need to be right like that 2 out of 10 times. If it's an 80% scenario and you do it and 8 out of 10 times you lose all your money, and then those 2 you win all the money, it's a plus EV situation. That is the better way to approach DFS. But you got to have the balls, you got to have the guts to understand I'm going to lose 80 to 90% of the time all of my money doing that. So I'm not recommending it because I don't want DFS Army members to lose all of their money 80 to 90% of the time. You'll be gone before you have a chance to see that it has success. But what I do is I'm explaining the different scenarios, and then you're allowed to make your own decisions, how you want to approach it. That's the beauty of this. We're breaking down what the most likely thing to happen is, then what the best strategic approaches are, and then you have to take that and do with it what you will. So let's continue. Robbie Anderson, very unlikely, but he's very explosive Jets pass catcher. We know players like him, he can get 33 fantasy points on a smash game. If he's doing that, Sam Darnold needs to be in the flex. So if you have Anderson here as your captain or your MVP on Fanduel, you need to have Sam Darnold in your flex. And I think that situation absolutely favors Lamar Jackson, and the anything the Jets are doing will favor the Ravens offensive skill position player. So if you're doing that, it's like a double onslaught type situation. In the flex, I've got some turds here. I mean, I've got them broken down for you, kind of how I want to play them. I might raise this up. I just think that, especially, I'm going to change this to a cash or an all play here, because again, I don't love Bell, to be clear, but I do like that Bilal Powell's out, so he's going to be out there, and the only possibility that the Jets have of staying in this game is probably going to be by a heavy Le'Veon Bell game plan. I just don't see it happening. They never do it, or they haven't done it, but that would be their best case scenario. So if I'm running out of cash lineup, it's probably Le'Veon Bell as my Jet, either that or I don't know. We'll see. We'll take a look at the scoring system. But, this gives you a general idea for where I would have my exposures for some of these players. You got some super turds down here, all these garbage guys. One of these garbage players might win you the tournament. Chances are maybe they won't, but this is for running 150. Do not play turds. Don't play the turds like in a cash game or a high dollar GPP. That's not where I play. With Boyle and Hayden Hurst, for example, I like these guys. I have them a little bit higher. But my hope here is like Andrews actually doesn't play. Like I'm kind of considering when it says he'll give it a go, he'll try to go, that maybe he doesn't go. And if he doesn't go, Andrews is very, very expensive. And if he doesn't go, it's going to be one of these guys. Lamar Jackson likes to throw to the tight end. So that's how I'm looking at it. Now, let's take a quick look at the FanDuel sheet. Lamar Jackson, 70 to 100%. FanDuel, everything is about touchdowns. Therefore, it's much more difficult to wide receivers to get there compared to on DraftKings. Touchdowns is key. So, you've got Jackson, Darnold, Ingram, and Bell as your primaries. I gave you a little bit of sniff of some of these other guys. Very, very low exposure. But your mains are going to be, of course, Lamar Jackson. Then a little taste of Bell, Ingram, and Darnold. And when I say a little taste, I mean very little. If Jackson isn't my FanDuel captain, MVP, he's probably going to be in my flex. Again, Darnold does not set up well for a great game. This could be one of those games where he has a very bad score. But, he's projected for 14, so he has a decent projection. Le'Veon Bell stands out with his projection. And that's about it on DraftKings. You get a little bit of Robbie Anderson in your Darnold lineups. Again, if I'm playing Anderson, I'm playing Darnold together with him. If I'm playing a Jets pass catcher like that, I'm playing Darnold with him. If not, I'm just playing Darnold. But like, I think if Robbie Anderson's having a smash game, then Darnold is probably good enough to be in the MVP, in the perfect lineup. So I'm just pairing that up. I'm going to pair up Jets wide receivers with their quarterback. Jameson Crowder is a little more possession, so I think I can just play him. It's between him and Anderson. The reason I have Crowder and not Anderson is the all play. And it's twofold. One is the salary. Crowder 8,500, Anderson 13,500. Second is the matchup. Marlon Humphrey is going to be on Robbie Anderson. He's very good. He's a very good corner. Crowder will be crossing and slot work, and he just won't have the type of coverage that Robbie Anderson will have. So for the purpose of the matchup, if I can get this guy cheaper, because you might say, why this guy and not that guy? Yeah, and Tristan, that's what, looking back to the Browns game, this is what I'm saying. The Jets' best game plan, the Ravens have a fierce pass rush. So how do you avoid that? You're going to throw it to Crowder, the quick slot guy, the quick slant, or you're going to throw it to Le'Veon Bell. Now, there's no tight end on the Jets, so they have to go to those two guys. Shady McQueen. I think the Jets could get 2 sacks. Why? What is that for your fantasy? Is this a prop? Betting a prop? I mean, I'm not counting on it, but sure they can. Jets have, they have a decent defensive line. But again, what's going on if the Ravens are a fierce pass rush? The Jets are going to have to get the ball out fast. That's why I guess if the Ravens were blitzing, you might like Robbie Anderson there, because then they're bringing the heat and no safety and the whole deal, and Anderson can get free deep. But the Ravens can pass rush without doing that. Therefore, I think it's going to be the quick slant guy. And again, they're going to have to check down to Bell. They don't do it. They haven't done it all year. They're going to have to do it. They're going to have to throw it to Crowder. I don't think Vincent Smith or any of these other fucking turds are going to do anything. Never know. Never know. Fanduel, I want to be aware, these turdly tight ends, Hayden Hurst and Nick Boyle, do not forget about these guys. Lamar Jackson likes to throw to the tight end. He likes to throw to the tight end. So you can't forget about those guys. Ty Montgomery, he plays a role for the Jets. That is a quick pass kind of thing, so maybe he gets some extra run. I don't know. Ty Montgomery playable there. And, again, turds. Justice Hill comes in the fourth quarter in a smash game, breaks a big run, blah, blah, blah. Got to find one of these turds. Got to have some uniqueness in your lineup. You're not going to win. Let me show. Oh, I got a little bonus for you guys. No, Rodriguez. There are definitely no standalone slate breakers for the Jets. I think Le'Veon Bell is your best hope. No one's breaking this slate. Not from the Jets. Le'Veon Bell or a turd or something. Yes, it does. Now, guys, I got a little bonus for you. I'm going to show you the new. All right. This is special only for your eyes. There's a update about to happen for the Domination Station. We're in beta testing now. It's actually on the beta server that we use to test out things. And I just wanted you to take a look, man. Look at these nice logos, baby. A little color in there. We did some changes to it. A couple of cool things, like for the showdowns in particular, I wanted to show you guys, those of you who spent time watching this, now you can uncheck a player in the captain or the flex spot. This has been a thing that we haven't had the ability to do. So now if I want to uncheck somebody in the captain spot, I can, but they will remain in the flex. Now they're gone from the captain. When you look at all players, you see those guys, and you're like, hey, let me bring them back. Let me bring them back. Let me bring them back, right? So a pretty cool little update there. A couple other things like that we just added in. A bunch of stuff in this update, but I thought you guys would get a kick out of checking out the kind of new look. Just a fun thing. Just a fun thing to check out. A couple other things happen in this update, but I think the new look is the most dramatic. It's been a big update, saving. Oh, here's another one. You could save your optimization runs. This shit. thinking about canceling that stupid rule too, but you could save your optimization runs. So now when you do a run, you might want to keep going with them, but you get a little ability to save it. There it is, run 1. So if you run it again, there it is, run 2, and now I could go back to the previous one. Which one do I want to download? This one? They're the same because I didn't change the settings, but pretty cool stuff. This way you can go back if you're like, you know what, I like that last one I did. We have some save setting features going in as well. Some changes to hockey, a lot of other cool stuff. But the main one is the look. Check this out. Looks sexy. You know, we're finally getting around to some stuff that I'm excited about adding to the Domination Station. You're going to see the type of updates we do over the next few months are going to be like look and feel, user experience, because we're crushing our stacks. Our NFL stack system is the best in the industry by far. It's not even close. We've worked on all of things like that. So we're starting to get into some look and feel stuff, the ability to upload your projections if you want. All kinds of cool things that I've been sort of waiting to do. So I'm really excited about what's going to happen over the next 5 or 6 months. We've got sort of an overhaul to the MLB projection system happening too, or the stacking system happening as well. That'll be ready before MLB season. We have a full scale planned NHL update kind of in the works. I'm not sure when that'll happen, but I'm sure we'll get it out for this season because NHL just drags on and on. It's like till June. So a lot of cool stuff going on with the Domination Station. But the biggest one might be what we've changed about these showdowns, because it's so much more intuitive now. Now when you change your, again, exposures in the flex, it's a captain and flex, you see it. When you do your sheet here, you could see the difference, who's a captain, who's a flex, who's all. You can't see it as much here, but we've just got a lot of cool things going on for the showdowns. There's a reason our guys have been winning every single showdown every single time. I don't think there's been one showdown all season, or maybe there's been a couple, but for the most part, DFS Army members using the Domination Station have won just about every NFL showdown this season on one form or another, be it on Fanduel, be it on Draftkings. It was the mini max. It wasn't, it's not been the ultimate prize on the $9 contest, obviously, but somebody hit a mini max or somebody hit it on Fanduel. There hasn't been one where we haven't hit that I can remember, one side or the other. Sometimes it's a lot of us tying, sometimes just one, but I fucking love it. So it's just proof that the tool works, that the tool is doing what it's supposed to do. The setup and design is correct. Now it's up to you guys, because you have the tools at your disposal to put it to work. Now, final notes. If you don't have any questions, final notes. Remember, it's a showdown, highly volatile, especially this one with crazy super chalk Lamar Jackson. There could be a lot of ties. So be careful how much money you put into this, because you could end up maxing out. I've done it many times. I've maxed out the FanDuel, for example, contest. I've won it and still lost money in the contest, because if you're in a tie group, it's not enough to cover the entry fee for all those dead lineups that didn't make it. So just be careful. Anything can happen in a showdown. We've got a big week 15 ahead of us that I'm in love with. So don't blow your bankroll here, guys. I love week 15. Sheets are coming together for week 15. I had to do the showdown sheet, so it threw me back a day. Brandon's asking who's the better between Hurst and Doyle, and my preference is Hurst. But they're both turds, but my preference is Hurst. I'll have both, but I think I even in my sheet here I have a little more Hurst exposure, and so where is it? Where's Doyle? Boyle, 5 to 15, 10 to 15. So, I mean, a little bit. I think maybe I did a little different here. Hurst and Doyle, 25, 15. So you get a little sense that I like Hurst a little bit more, but it's not like that big of a deal. Just a little bit more. That's it for this one, guys. I will be back at some point tonight, tomorrow, with the Wolfpack DFS Army VIP only Slate Breakdown podcast, where we'll have some DFS Army staff pros talking out the slate week 15 with me, covering all that good stuff. Doyle. You're right. Boyle. Good call, Dave. Obviously, on Saturday, I'll be back with the Players Club. Guys, I'm putting probably 20 entries into the Fanduel Online Championship. That's a $250 entry contest. A lot of my focus is going to be on that one this week, trying to win it, take it home the prize for the DFS Army crew, going for it. So I'll have a lot of focus on that for this week, FanDuel side. But I'll be back with the Players Club on Saturday, break down the whole slate. You know how we do. If you watched the Players Club last week, you got on Jimmy Garoppolo and Drew Brees. I hope that happened. I hope you watched it. I think the guys who are watching this probably did see it, probably did play. I saw a lot of game stacks around that game. No one played it. That's why you listen to the pod. I've got a Crowder. I'm forced to play Crowder in one league, Tristan. I got no other choice. But yeah, so if you played that game stack, and this is another great week for game stacks, because there's so many games to target and so many potential chalk explosions. One of which I've identified that on the Vegas lines breakdown with myself, John, and says where I hope you guys saw that because we had a legitimate disagreement about a couple of games, and I like that. So good luck tonight, guys. I'll be around. I'll be in Slack, doing my thing, answer questions when I can. You know how we roll. Good luck tonight.